Albert Awol, the voice of the jungle, broadcasting on the DVC to all points unknown. If you're within the sound of my voice, you're listening to Welcome Home Podcast on the DVC.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Golden Button Detours, I guess is what we kind of decided on.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
So I'm here with Blake. This is our first time doing the show here, and this is going to be a little bit of a different show. It's going to be probably less topical based, even though the first thing I want to talk about is, super topical. But, we're going to go through a whole bunch of things. I think the only consistent is going to be is that each episode is going to have a what if section. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. And I guess the first thing, Blake, is do you want to kind of introduce yourself? I mean, everyone should know who I am, I feel like.
Yeah, sure. So, hey, everyone. This is Blake. I've been listening to the podcast probably for around 3 years, right about when we all went into lockdown for COVID. And I've been listening ever since and have enjoyed every minute of it. So I've got 3 boys that have all grown up with Disney. I've taken them on trips, and we just got back from our latest trip where I only took the youngest one with me and my wife. And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
I mean, let's be honest. That's really why I wanted you to come on, is because of the trip report. Let's be real. So I think the first thing, though, I have to talk about today is Inside Out 2 trailer just got released today.
Yeah.
I have this feeling that this is going to be, not that Pixar really needed saving, but they kind of, they needed a little bit. And I think this is going to be a movie that just resonates with everybody. I am super excited about this. Love the first one. I think even now, that movie is a little bit older, the first one, Inside Out, and people still talk about it. So
right. And they're going back to a known quantity, something they know works for them.
But I also think it's super relatable for everybody. And again, unfortunately, if you haven't seen the trailer, this is not going to be, ruining anything for you, but anxiety is the new emotion that comes into play, and the trailer's about anxiety. And I think that, that's something that everyone can relate to. And I think that's why this is going to do so well. I am super excited for this one.
Yeah.
Super excited.
It looks really cool. I have seen it.
So I'm going to end up writing an article about this over at BSC Kids on why I think this is going to save, the animated movies from Disney for some time now. And I think that there's just a lot to like about that. So super non-topical show. First thing we talk about, topical, but that's okay. That's okay. So
we're winging it here, folks, in case you haven't figured it out quite.
We are absolutely winging it. And I think for myself, this is just kind of, a regular sort of week thing. But for Blake, it's, probably your first one, right? Your first podcast that you've been on.
Absolutely. Very first podcast episode ever. So,
yeah. So this is not, I don't know if this is going to necessarily be released always with the other show. This is, it's kind of a separate show. And the reason I kind of brought it up is because I know that I've been off of the main show for a couple of weeks just because of life, right? Like still got, 3 kids doing a lot of stuff. And this was a way for me to kind of talk about things when I couldn't necessarily make the show. But I also think that this might end up filling in the show. I'm also hopeful we can get some interviews, just some different things that are easier to coordinate with, really just me having to coordinate it and rather than Tom and Trevor and coordinating everything. So this is not going to be, necessarily a replacement, even though this week, that Tom unfortunately had some things come up. So maybe it replaces this week. Not sure, but
yeah, so this is not going to be Welcome Home Podcast 2.0.
No, it is not. No, this is not. So I think one of the things that you brought up, Blake, was, we wanted to talk about different, kind of things maybe. And one of yours was, well, what's kind of, I don't really like your wording here, gaming the system scenario, but let's just say, what's your biggest kind of hack that you use at Disney? And maybe it's something that people are unaware of. So I think for me, the biggest thing that we use all the time that has made such a great difference, especially as the kids have been growing up, is the free water. Like I get it's a little tough to go up to one of the places and ask for free water, right? But it's not like it's not a thing. It's a thing. Free water is a thing. We don't buy water at all.
Yeah, we
unless there's like an issue, right? So there have been some times, unfortunately, where like it's been so hot and there has been a level of kind of heat exhaustion that may be creeping up for, one of the kids or something. And then if we can't find, a free water place quick enough, then yes, we'll get a water or things like that. But more often than not, there's a ton of places. And, as long as you can get over, I guess, right, we can, a little throwback to the first section already, a little anxiety that you might have asking, it's the biggest thing. It's the biggest thing possible.
And I've seen cast members even who work behind the counters at like the quick stop food places. They encourage that, or they'll say, I've seen a guest go up and say, is there a water fountain anywhere I can fill my bottle up? And they said, no, don't do that here. I've got ice water right here. So it's,
Absolutely.
You should never feel embarrassed, let me put it that way, to go ask for that water. It's
Absolutely.
there for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're paying for it in your ticket. Trust me.
But I do feel like there is some anxiety around it. I know that I've asked my kids to go do it, and that is something that just will not happen, especially at this point. So it's usually my wife going and handling that portion. But yeah, as long as you can get over that little anxiety that you might have asking, yeah, that's probably the biggest hack that we use regularly that not everyone necessarily uses. So
okay. So you're looking at current hacks. Now, the way I looked at it was, what was the biggest hack I've ever used?
Oh man, I have my running shoes on. Yeah, it's a different scenario at that point. Go ahead.
All right, so let me tell you about mine. So 3 years ago, my oldest son graduated from high schools, and we went to Disney. That was his senior trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was supposed to be a cruise, but COVID nixed all of that. So we made the plans. Going to Disney, great. And then after all of that, they made the announcement that Magical Express was going away. But it was still going to be active when we were going to be there, but we were only going to be able to use it this last time. Well, the way I had set up the trip was that we were going to spend one night at Disney Swan and Dolphin.
Okay.
And then move over to the Boardwalk Villas. All right. Well, if Magical Express did not go to Disney Swan and Dolphin. So I was like, man, we gotta figure out a way to use this Magical Express one time. Cause we love Magical Express. Like the whole, like to us, that's your prepping. That's your entry gateway into the bubble. That starts the whole experience. And so I started looking around, poking around, trying to find like, is there a way we can just get a room one night somewhere on resort to use Magical Express? And this was at a time where the parks had just recently kind of opened back up. And everybody had this pent up travel demand. So like rooms were crazy. Like even like Art of Animation and All Stars, like they were $250+ a night.
Okay.
I mean, it was crazy. So I kept looking and finally stumbled across this. Did you know that at Fort Wilderness Campgrounds, you can book one night out on a campsite, which is nothing more than a cleared bare spot on the ground and a concrete pad for your vehicle. No water, no electricity. You can rent that or book that 3 years ago for about $80, $80 a night. And when I was looking at the Lyft and the Uber, that was $60. So I started thinking, man, for $20 more, I can stay on resort and get use of the Magical Express. So that's what I did. Okay. I booked one night, booked one night at the campground. I kept my Swan and Dolphin because that's where we're going to stay.
Yep.
But I booked one night at the campground. And when we arrived at MCO, Orlando International, went down to the Magical Express lane, the guys, the folks there greeted us. Hey, Mr. Long, how you doing? I said, we've got you down here. You're staying one night at the campground. And then I went up, hey, let's talk about this for a second. So I flat out explained to him, honestly, the entire deal. That we were staying at Swan and Dolphin. And really, I just booked this because we wanted to do Magical Express one more time. Okay. And he looked at me and he said, okay. And so I said, I know you can't take me to Swan and Dolphin. Can you at least take me to like Yacht Club or Beach Club so that we can at least walk from there? And he's like, sure. So that's exactly what we did. He took us to Yacht Club. We walked in the front door, looked at the lobby, said, this looks great. and then we walked right out the back door and walked around the boardwalk to Swan and Dolphin. So we got to use Magical Express.
I like that. I mean, if we're going to bring up like biggest hacks ever, I feel like for myself was always that, get everyone's ticket and have one person run to the Fast Pass boxes that printed out the paper Fast Passes.
Yeah,
that was always my thing, right? Like I just get everyone's stuff and, maybe have like 10 cards with me and just boom, 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 boom.
Holding 5 magic bands and just going and scanning each one of them. Yep.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even before that, when there was just cards, right?
That
was always
cards.
a fun thing.
Yeah.
Just take everyone's cards and boom, just knock them out real quick, get all your Fast Passes. So I think that was fun. So it's interesting, though, both of us being from North Carolina. So you fly from here and you don't drive, huh?
Yeah. We are both of a kind of a certain age, and I'm getting to the point where driving for 10 hours is just not enjoyable for me anymore. And so, all right. So a little more background. I travel quite a bit for my primary work. And so I have lots of airline points and so I get to use that. So flying for me is second nature.
For me, the part of this hack conversation is not doing breakfast, right? And I can only really accomplish that if I go in a car. And, when we go in a car, we'll bring food, we'll bring, waters, we'll bring all of that stuff, and then not do breakfast at all.
Right. And the way we get around that is because I've got status with airlines, I get to check bags for free. So we'll literally fill one hard shell suitcase up with nothing but breakfast, like, Pop-Tart boxes and the individual cereal things, so we don't buy the breakfast either. So, but that's how we get around it. Yeah.
So that's a good thing. All right. So this next section, and as you can already tell, right, these are going to be shorter shows. There's no food talk. Thank goodness. There is, not a lot besides just kind of a short little show, which is kind of what we wanted. So the next thing is this what if, right? So if you're familiar with the Marvel comics back in the day, there was this what if section. So I was thinking, everyone knows that I'm not a huge resale fan, right? All my contracts are real contracts, and said, well, the problem is that, what do you do if you don't have somewhere to use your points? Yeah, you could sell them back. Yeah, you can bank them. But what if you're done banking? Like, so for us, this has come up a few times where we've had to, this is why we're doing the cruise on all points for us. It's easier. We need to kind of burn some points and things like that. But what if you could use your points for things like Lightning Lane? What if you could use your points for food or upgrades or things like that? But I think one of the ones is really this Lightning Lane scenario, right? Because it can be a little pricey if you want to do something with a family of 5 and you want to, purchase the Lightning Lane for just a specific ride, right? Individual Lightning Lane. It can get pricey. But what if I could use points?
Yeah. I mean, it's already in your bank, so to speak. So why not? And you should be able to select that and just a la carte whatever you want to. Yeah.
Well, and I think it generates a greater discussion about, if we had points, does it really hurt Disney to do this? And I just don't think it does, because they could take these DVC rooms and flip them to cash rooms. That's not a problem, right? So for them, it shouldn't be an issue. And if you have 6 points here, 5 points there, I think maybe people are losing points sometimes. I saw a post just actually today about somebody had 6 points and they didn't know what to do and they couldn't bank them. What are you doing with 6 points, right? And they think that this would be a way for you to use those points so there'd be a less frustration factor when you come to the point where there's not, a use for a smaller amount of points. I don't know. So, I kind of like this idea.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So let's say the average price for 1 point direct from Disney. That's what, like nowadays it's around 200. Is that right?
Yeah, so I mean, there'd have to be some math, but I would say not even go that route. Just give me what you're paying per point when you have to get excess points, right? So like when you're like a couple points short and you can purchase them as a one-time use points,
right?
Give me that money, like kind of that relationship of money. I'd be good with that as a number.
So then let's say Lightning Lane for your favorite ride. Like what in your mind, what's your I'm willing to spend 2 points or 3 points. Like, what's your cutoff where you're saying, that's too much?
Yeah, so I think the point scenario would kind of be like this cruise thing, right? Where you're probably not getting your best value for it. So I'm okay with that again, because sometimes just not spending the money is better than the value of what you have, right? Isn't that what they kind of say for just like when people have like vintage stuff, right? Well, what's it worth? Well, it's worth whatever you will, someone willing to pay for it.
Exactly.
Same sort of thing. So I would say, I think 2 points. I think there should be a tiered system. I think it could be between 1 and 3, and I'm okay with that per person.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that. So, if you're figuring that 18 points, $18 a point, yeah, 3 would be tough, right? I don't know if I want to spend that per person. Maybe 1 or 2. I'd be like good with 1 or 2 as a tiered system.
Yeah. When I was thinking about this, and my mind went immediately to Lightning Lane also. I was thinking, what if you could upgrade the Lightning Lane to something like Universal has, where you could do unlimited Lightning Lanes for an entire day?
Ooh, I think the problem with that is just management, like, people management. I mean, I guess it's always possible. Anything is possible, but just the management of people. I mean, unless you're going to limit that per day, which I guess you could.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a bad thing. I'd almost, like I said, I'd love to use points just for like, hey, listen, give me menus at every place, not quick serve. Let's say sit down, right? And desserts could be worth 2 points. Like, right? Like dinners could be worth 4. Like, I'm okay with that. I just
literally a la carte is what.
Yes, literally a la carte. I feel like there's an opportunity. I think it solves, a few problems that, people have, and maybe even Disney has. It allows them to kind of really make more money at the end of the day when you think about it. And I'd be okay with that as kind of my what if.
I would throw in VIP tours as well as something you could purchase.
I mean, how many points would that take though? Like,
I know that's the thing.
See, so this is kind of the thing, right? So let's just say you're a DVC member and you take your loan out, you do your 10 years, doesn't matter how many points you have, you could pay it over 10 years. That's great. Fine. No problem. And then you just don't want to spend the money for something. You should be able to, kind of like a home equity loan, right? Like, listen, I understand that you can rent your points and things like that, right? But, outside of these swaps, there are some, you are renting points to get cash back. And then there's, things you have to do when you do that before you use that cash for other things. So, I would say I just like it out there as everything. Yeah, I'm good with that. How about early entry? Okay. Like, yeah, I understand like that's crazy because now you're talking about having a whole bunch of, extra people in the parks, but like, what if you were just like, hey, 15 minutes early to the parks, I'm okay with.
So would you remove the current 30-minute for just regular resort guests?
But just give me like 15 extra minutes so I don't have to wait on that massive line, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll be honest with you, even if it was just 10 minutes, and even though the rides weren't open yet, you could at least start walking, right, to wherever you want to go instead of having to go through that whole, herd of people at the beginning. I'd be okay with that too. I think there's tons of opportunities for this.
Yeah. And you would only want this for direct points, right? Not
everything is always direct points. Everything for me is always direct points. But what about even just minivan? Like, what if you like made it like, hey, okay, listen, I'm not going to get crazy here. I'm just going to keep it pretty, down to earth and just minivans.
Yeah.
What if I could just use minivans? Like, that would be great too.
Wow. Like, so what if you were buying into DVC? Let's say this existed and you were buying into DVC. Would you budget extra money, or would you budget extra? So let's say you want to stay at Boardwalk always and you want to stay a week. So that costs 300 points. But then there's also these other things. Would you buy extra points from the get-go just to be able to do
think I would.
extra things?
Yeah, I don't think I would. I don't think that I would need to. I would this would kind of be like some extra fun benefits that I would use just for, kind of without having to do anything else. Like, it's kind of like this cruise that we're doing. I don't really have to do anything. Like, I just call up, got a cruise, didn't have to put any money out of my pocket. And the nice thing about a cruise is that, it's all inclusive. So I'm literally paying nothing to go on a vacation. That's a win for me. That's a win. And look, I understand people, are upset with me about the whole, well, you could just have done a swap. But here's the thing. When I do a swap, I still have to do work. I still have to make that reservation for somebody. And then if there's a problem, I got to call back and deal with that reservation. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do anything. I just want to call up, get my cruise, be done. I don't want to have it like hanging over my head that like, hey, I might have to make another reservation or cancel a reservation, then
right. You don't want places. You don't
Yeah.
want places where things can go wrong.
No, and it is a little bit of a hassle that reserving something for somebody else is a hassle. Like it's just you just don't want to do it. So I'm okay with that. So I think that was, kind of our what if for this section. Dude, we are cruising along. When there's no Tom and Trevor, gosh, things go so quickly. Now there is only two of us though, so we have to take that into account.
And we've been recording, what now, 20 minutes so far?
Yeah, that's not so bad at all.
Yeah. I feel like it's flown by already.
Yeah. So I think that the last thing we kind of want to do is talk about your trip. So I think we will use the Golden Button Detours for people that are making trips that want to talk about them outside of Tom, Trevor, and myself, which we'll talk about them on the main show. But, we kind of want to hear about your trip. So you said this one was a little bit different because it was just your one son and you and your wife, right? Now, how old is he?
Our youngest is 11. So he just started middle school, 6th grade for those, So, and it was, honestly, it was our first time having a kid that age being the only kid, because our two older kids were close enough in age that the first time we went, it was always the both of them. And this first time with a young kid that didn't have a sibling to have to argue with all the time, it was such a refreshing experience. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, that's so interesting because even though like our kids, like, my kids, my two oldest are very close in age as well. And then my daughter's 13. So probably a similar situation to what you have. My two oldest boys are like, stuck together. So that works out well. And my daughter will hang out with them too. It kind of frees up some of our time, to be honest with you, but go ahead. Yeah. So this was a little different for you.
Right. So we got there, this was on October 28th, I think. So right at the end of the whole Halloween season. And over the course of that trip, we actually got to see 2 different seasons at Disney, which was really cool.
We've done that trip as well. Yep.
Yeah. So we got to see the Halloween, and at the end of the trip, we got to see the Christmas put up. So it was really neat. So we went, and this was our first time using the Genie Plus and Lightning Lane system.
Oh, okay.
Last time we went, it wasn't available. And I'll be honest, I went into this expecting to hate it. Just from what I'd read. And I that's exactly what I was going to say. I was actually pleasantly surprised by it. Once you separate it from the old FastPass system, and by that I mean like the old way you had to use up that quote unquote lightning lane before you could book another one.
So there's definitely some differences, but you know what the nice thing is? You weren't necessarily up at the crack of dawn 60 days before trying to book your fast passes. So
exactly.
There is that.
Exactly. Yeah. The only change I would make to that Genie Plus is I wish you could book the Genie Plus for the day other than the morning of or like the midnight before, because right now you can't do that. And I kind of wish you could.
Yeah,
that was the only downside.
Individual lightning lane, you have to book it in the morning, so you're kind of still waking up, booking it, and then going back to bed, sort of thing. But
exactly, and that is exactly what happened. So, and with the new lightning lane system, oddly enough, I actually see a little bit of benefit using a lightning lane in limited circumstances for like a parade or show seating, because if you've got these lightning lanes and it's your turn or it's your time to make a lightning lane and there's nothing you're seeing that, is really kind of interesting you, like as far as a ride.
Yeah.
Preferred seating for, a parade or a show is not a terrible thing to use it for. So,
I mean, for you, I'm not about either one of those, but I get it.
Yeah.
I can understand it.
I bought Genie Plus every single day. Probably didn't need to, but it was interesting to use. I liked it. I
want to know about Moana. Like, that's really what I want to know about.
Moana was neat. It's definitely geared towards younger kids, right?
You did it once or more than once?
We did it once. It was interesting. I mean, I don't know that I would ever walk through it again.
More than once?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me put a clarification on that. My family was there. I actually, a little more information. I actually had to go down for a work conference, and the second day they were in Epcot, I was in my work conference. So they went into Epcot, but I don't think they did Moana again. It was nice. It was cool. but it's just one of those things that once you do it one time, you're like, okay, I don't need to go back to that.
And so, was there a line? How were you fed into it?
No, there is a dedicated entrance. There was no line. We did not have to wait. And I mean, there was a little bit of crowding, so it's kind of set up into, I want to call it vignettes, if that makes sense.
Yep.
The whole thing is it's talking about the ecosystem of water. So like it rains, the water goes into streams, and then it evaporates back into the air, and it's the whole circle of life thing. And each vignette is about each one of those steps in the life cycle of water. So the whole thing about the waterfall separating, it's interesting. You know, I can see how they use that technology. It's not life-changing.
The technology from the 1990s. I get it.
Yeah.
So did you know what hadn't you seen before? So like, when was your trip before that? So like, what was kind of new to you?
So the last trip we took was back in July 2021. So it's been a little over 2 years. We had not done Remy because Remy opened up later that year.
It's not bad.
Yeah, I enjoyed Remy. It's a neat from a perspective where you were being shrunk down to the size of a rat.
Made me a little like queasy, which I was surprised about because rides usually don't.
And that's something that I hope Disney does not get on this whole 4D motion simulator kick like Universal. That's just like, it's just like a big barf machine.
Unless it's holograms. If it's holograms, then that's fine.
Yeah.
So you hadn't gone on Remy. You hadn't gone on
Guardians yet.
Oh, okay. So the question is, Guardians, what do you think?
I like it. I think the ride profile fits the characters that are involved, if that makes sense.
Better than, okay, so Flight of Passage, Guardians, Rock and Roller Coaster. In order.
I will go, Guardians is 1, Rock and Roller Coaster's 2, the Avatar is 3. And I made some notes about Avatar. I like that. It was the first time my 11-year-old had ever ridden it. But I'm starting to notice some maintenance issues on that ride. Like the soundtrack wasn't working. Like we rode it two times, right? And in one of those rooms where you ride, the soundtrack wasn't working. So like you got all the sound effects of the animals and the swooshing and all that, but the soundtrack that was behind it, you couldn't hear that at all. So it kind of took away a little bit. We rode Tron, obviously. Have you ridden that yet?
No, I have not. But I'm also not like, I'm not like super amped for it. I mean,
you're gonna have to ride it one time.
I'm sure I will. You know, I think that Tron is one of those with Moana. Like, I'm not making a trip for it.
Oh no!
But when I'm there, I will. Like, you know, certain things you kind of make a trip for. Like, and I don't think that's one of them. We're in this weird scenario where we were supposed to go to Disney, then we weren't going to Disney this year, and then it was like, all right, we're going to Disney and we're doing the safari, the paid safari, and that was our thing. Like, okay, we're going to do that, and then we're like, now we're just going to do this cruise. So we burned all our points for this year and next year for the cruise. Okay, so and that was fine because my goal is to go do the cruise this year, and then we're going to hit Dollywood too because they have the new hotel at Dollywood. So that will be this summer. And the next summer has to be all about Epic Universe. Now, I was trying to save a few points so that I could get a room the day before going to Epic Universe at Disney. But yeah, that's next year. So I don't think I'll actually be in the parks again. Oh boy. I mean, so 24 is out, 25 is out, probably 26. I think 26.
Wow.
Yeah. Again, I don't see us going next year. If we're going to do Epic Universe, I want to spend all my time there, but one never knows. There's not anything that's on the agenda for Disney that has me like, oh man, I got to do that. If there was, maybe that changes, but I don't think so. I don't think there's anything really. So
I wouldn't make Toronto make a special trip for that. I will say that they have a really neat section in their queue line. Mm-hmm. I don't want to spoil it, but there's this one part. If have you watched the Tron movies? I'm assuming you have.
Only the old one, like not the new one.
The original. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So there's this part in the queue line where you are being digitized onto the game grid, right?
Okay.
And what happened? I'm not going to spoil it, but you're taken into this small room, you and a group of people, and it's part of the queue line. But they say, prepare for can't say
digitization.
that. That
Gotcha.
works. So they say prepare for it, and then the music gets loud, and then all of a sudden it goes black, and something happens that I'm not going to spoil, but it looks really cool. Like it's my second favorite queue line experience.
So here's the real question: are you old enough to have played the OG game that had the big
man?
stick?
I pumped so many quarters into that machine.
Yeah.
I cannot even tell you how much money I wasted on it.
Yeah, that was always a fun game where you're on the throwing the discs between.
Doing the light cycle.
Yes, that was always a fun game for sure.
And then other than that, do we have time to talk about Mickey's Not So Scary? Just right quick.
Of course. I'm just going to go on record saying that I wasn't a big fan of it, but I think that my kids were overtired, which I made the mistake of, and we were waiting. We were waiting for a picture with the dwarves, and then something happened. Like one of the dwarves was sick, and like the line turned into a disaster, and it kind of just squashed our whole night. But go ahead.
Yeah. So we did. So this was our first time doing the Not So Scary Halloween party.
Mm-hmm.
We enjoyed it. Again, this is one of those things where I'd say, man, this was great. I had a great time. Probably won't do it again until grandkids finally roll into my life.
Yeah.
But I think the trick to the Not So Scary is to make sure you are either at that park during the day or you park hop into it before 4:00, before they start allowing.
Yeah, the problem was it makes it a long day for younger kids, and that was the mistake we made. So we tried to accomplish that, but it turned into a little bit of a disaster.
Right. Well, we started the day out at Animal Kingdom, which is already really a half-day park, let's be honest. Yep. And so we went back to our room around 1:00. We chilled out for a little bit, and then we got into our costumes, and then got into Magic Kingdom around 3:30 before they started letting everybody in. And we beelined it to Tomorrowland, like near Stitch's Great Escape, where it used to be. That's where they were giving out the wristbands. Went there, then we went right back to Town Square Theater, and that's where Jack and Sally were. Okay. We got there in that line, and it said 90 minutes, and we're like, whatever. And it was not. It's just like the rides. They overinflate those wait times. I think we were in there for 40 minutes. Did that. Then we got Mickey and Minnie in their Halloween costumes were right there next to it. And so literally before 6:00, before the whole event even started, we had the main two characters already met, and we were able to kind of go around and enjoy. We didn't ride any rides during it because I felt like that was a waste of time, to be honest. Like we were there to meet characters.
Time.
Yeah, you can ride rides anytime. We were there to meet characters, get candy, get pictures, watch the shows. So I said, we enjoyed it. We all dressed up as variant Lokis to be a little topical. I think the only other thing about this trip, you were going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the only other thing about this trip that we realized we really enjoy, Disney is kind of leaning into these scavenger hunt type exercises in the different lands. Mm-hmm. I
wish there was more of them, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. I do too. You remember it all started back with like the Phineas and Ferb thing over in
Kim Possible and then DuckTales.
Yeah, Kim Possible. Yep. Now it's DuckTales. My kid loved that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I let him do all the button pushing, but I was right there with him because I enjoyed every bit of that. And they have something similar to that now in Adventureland in Magic Kingdom, where you use your magic band and you're part of Jack Sparrow's crew and you go do different things. And I mean, half the fun of that is activating all the special effects and watching the people who are walking by not knowing what's going on, going like that.
Absolutely. All right, so we're gonna keep it to our preset limit, unlike the other show with these guys that just run over so much, man. I can't do it. So a few things. We do need like theme music at some point. We'll have to work on that. And then the other thing that's been scaring me here is that I'm watching the lines for your vocals and audio go so much faster than mine, and that's making me nervous. But hopefully everything comes out okay. So, as we normally do, Golden Button Detours is for entertainment only. We are not employed by the Walt Disney Company, and all opinions expressed on this show are our own. Please consult with your DVC cast member or Disney representative for more information on anything we talked about. And that's a big thank you to Tom, right? He always writes that. So I figure I can get in on that. And we have no sponsor as of yet, so that's fine too. So if you like it, jump into the group, give us a review. You can actually say Golden Button Detours if you want in some of the reviews on iTunes. I know that would be interesting. And we don't have another scheduled date, but stay tuned. I'm sure we'll be back real soon.
And hey, don't give us a 1-star rating. Don't give the main show a 1-star rating just because we might be terrible. Don't do that.
All right, thank you, everybody.
All right, bye, everyone.
This is Skipper Albert A. the voice of the jungle, signing off from Welcome Home Podcast on the DVC.
Do a huddle when we hit its hair. How she can cuddle is no